Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. All right, welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast. Darren Mitchell here on a beautiful Friday, albeit a cold Friday. And today I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming to the podcast Mr. Mike Inman, all the way from Denver in Colorado. Mike, welcome, and how are you, my friend?
Hey, Darren, thank you for having me, and I'm doing spectacular.
We were just talking before about the weather difference, and you're talking about snow in Denver and how there's different variances of snow depending on where you live and buying north-facing versus east, west, south-facing. And it's cold here, but it's not quite snowing. But what's the weather like now in Denver? It's probably coming into the season.
It's beautiful here. It's about 20 degrees Celsius and sunny. We're in a spectacular time of year. But as we were talking about, there's these subtle cultural differences that are really important. As a negotiator, as a salesperson, that you have to pick up on it. I don't like to stereotype people, but there are important cultural differences, no matter where you go, that help build a relationship or start you off in a poor relationship. So I always try to do a little bit of homework on people and where they're from. I tell people, like, when I'm negotiating with someone who's lived in the Netherlands or is in the Netherlands, I will often say, and I like it because they're more efficient, they're very direct.
Yes.
But I, as a non-Dutch person, will say, allow me to be Dutch. So I'm not just because there's Americans can be rude and pushy. Yeah. So when I say allow me to be Dutch, I'm asking them to invite into their culture, respecting their culture, and then I can be direct. But now I'm not the pushy American, and I'm not being disrespectful to the Mexicans and the Canadians. But the world gets it. We've taken the name because we're aggressive. But to be respectful of that. And in the UK, who also speak English, they're a little more polite. So I have a harder time negotiating with someone from the UK. I'm married to a Brit. I spend a lot of time in the UK. But their culture is it's a little, I like them cold, a little more subtle and polite. And we have to respect these things as we go along.
Me too. And so we're going to talk today about negotiation. And I know you've got a eclectic mix of background in terms of you've been in sales, you run sales teams, you've been in procurement, and now you're the part owner of negotiation.com by Tableforce, which
negotiation training. There is a negotiation. We're not affiliated. So it's negotiationtraining.com.
Correct me. Thank you. Negotiationtraining.com by Tableforce. And we're going to talk about negotiation, because if it's one thing that most salespeople, I think, based on my experience, have difficulty with, it's actually negotiations and trying to get the best deal they possibly can, but also trying to build a relationship that is long-standing with a client. One of the philosophies I have around selling is that the sale actually doesn't start until after the sale is made. And if you think about the lifetime value of a customer, we've got to be thinking about how do we build that relationship long-term, which means you've got to do something respectful. So if you're going into a negotiation trying to get the very best deal you possibly can just for your organization at the expense of your customer, then you're not selling very well, and you're probably going to set yourself up for failure down, because they might sign up for the first contract, but then they're going to think about, no, we're certainly not going to do a renewal, and we're certainly not going to look for any other opportunities with this organization. So before we jump into this, because there's lots of things we can kind of talk about, love for you to just give a little bit of background on what led you to this. What led you to, because I know before we press record, you were talking about how you'd lost faith, in inverted commas, in C-level executives, that led you down to this path. But just give us a bit of background on what your career looked like and what led you down the path of negotiations, where you now specialize in helping organizations around the world.
Love to. So I started my career in sales, worked for a manufacturer's rep company. We made nothing, but we were the sales arm for global manufacturers selling into Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors. Okay. Some fairly large, sophisticated procurement organizations. And I did that job for about 3 years before I realized that I was average. And like everyone else,
average as a salesperson.
And that's me grading myself. So I probably was not even average. no one wants to be average, and I didn't want to be average either. So I developed a survey and I passed it out to my peers in the sales office, 80 people in the sales office.
Yeah.
And when the results came back, they didn't make sense. The only data point that was common across all the survey results was that they had all been in procurement roles before they went into sales roles. And I didn't understand why having a procurement background was important to sales. So I went to my boss and I said, hey, you know the survey? And he rolled his eyes. And he said, I know, I've heard all about the survey. And I said, well, do you know that everybody here has been in purchasing before they came into sales? And he said, duh, I could have told you that before the survey. And I said, no, not duh. Why is that important? And he said, it's because we understand the other side's sheet of paper. And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he said, okay, here, let me explain it this way. We understand when we have a relationship with the end user community, when we have the only capacity or ability, our plant is strategically located, we have intellectual property, that we have a strategic advantage.
Yeah.
And on those deals, we work to close at high margins because that's how we're compensated. And on the other side, we understand if we're the third or fourth or fifth bidder, sometimes I had 8 at General Motors.
Yeah.
And on those deals, he said, we still are going to be professional and polite, but we realize we're going to lose. So we lose fast. So we get our time back. And I said, yeah, it would be fascinating to know when I probably had the order and I could prioritize those deals. And when I probably didn't, how do I know? And he said, you're a smart guy, 8 or 10 years in sales, you'll probably figure it out. Or I know a hiring manager at General Motors. They're hiring buyers right now. If you'd like, I could put your CV in front of the hiring manager. And I said, well, if I was a purchasing guy, how long would it take me to figure out? And he said, a year or 2 tops. You'll definitely figure it out. And the voice in my head said, that sounds efficient. 8 or 10 years in sales, maybe 1 or 2 years in purchasing, definitely. Would you please make the phone call for me? So he got me a job as a buyer at General Motors. Now, for the people in sales who have been in purchasing and for the purchasers of the world, no disrespect to my former profession, but this was my job when I went from sales, working really hard, not working smart. But I understood sales. I understood their sales sheet of paper. Into purchasing, I would work with the internal user community, build out the specifications, the RFP package, send it out to my suppliers, and then I'd go play Mahjong and solitaire on my computer. I go to meetings, but those are the only games. I'm dating myself. Those are the only games we had at the time. The bids would start to come in. I'm playing games. They'd start to stack up on my desk. I'm playing games. The due date would hit. I'm playing games. Wouldn't even open them up.
Yeah.
Then I'd get a phone call from a supplier the day or two after the bids were due. And the phone call would go like this in a high stressed voice. They'd say, hey, Mike, we submitted our bid a few days ago. And we were wondering, how do we look? Without even looking at their bid, I would say, are you kidding me? You're way too high. Do better. Hang up the phone, back to Mahjong and solitaire. Later that day, the next day, I'd get a phone call from the same supplier and it would go like this. They'd say, hey, Mike, you were right. We work with finance, negotiated internally. We work with finance and we sharpened the pencil and we were able to give you an 8% discount. How does an 8% discount sound? Without even looking, I would say 8. You got to be double digits if you're serious about this order.
Yeah.
Or I would call in a supplier who had no shot, someone who was desperate. And I would take, just abuse them. Yeah. I'm General Motors. I've got volume. Small deal for me was $10 million. Then I would take the results of that negotiation and I would call a meeting with a supplier I really wanted to do business with. And I would say, I've met with your competition. I've already got all this stuff.
Yep.
If you can't beat this deal, you're going to lose this order. And I was really good at it. But now here's the problem. That type of negotiating is not sustainable.
No.
We drove hundreds, if not thousands of suppliers out of business with those type of practices. So after about 6 months, I woke up one day and I said, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I'm better than that. So I started to study negotiating. Started to read books, took classes like the one I now teach. And from that point forward, my career went from a buyer to a manager to a director in the GM system. I moved over to America West Airlines, which is now American Airlines.
Yeah.
Had all the indirect spend there. From there, I went to a company called IAC Interactive Corp, which owned at the time Expedia, Home Shopping Network, Ticketmaster, Match.com, industry-leading companies. And my job as head of purchasing was to get all of the the companies to negotiate internally.
Yeah.
So then we would negotiate with our suppliers with one voice. And then my last gig was with MGM Resorts International, and I had 50,000 hotel rooms on the strip. So I negotiating is a skill that I learned, became disciplined in, used, and my career took off.
Mm.
And now I get to teach the part of my job that I love the most. So here I am in front of you. So anything that I can help sellers with, understand how buyers make decisions and
Yeah.
how sellers can negotiate better deals. And you said it,
Yeah.
the relationship. There are people who will teach you how to trick the other side
Yeah.
into a deal. I've heard salespeople say, and you're not one of them, if I sell well enough, I don't have to negotiate.
Mm.
Now, intellectually, I understand that.
Yeah.
They have sold the value, and the buyer says, I see the value. Here is
Yes.
your purchase order.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. I believe negotiations are an opportunity to make 1 + 1 = 3.
Mm.
So if we sell well enough to close at our value proposition,
Yeah.
great. Now, I will say maybe you didn't ask for enough. Maybe you should have the other side say no. There's a thing called the power of no, where the other side says no, and you should actually feel good about that. It means you've asked for a lot. And it's an opportunity to say, okay, I can reduce the price. I can improve delivery. I can improve quality.
Mm.
Here's what I need from you. Can we have another year on the deal? Can you introduce me to someone at your sister division?
Yeah.
There's a way that I can help you meet your budget needs, meet your project needs, and you can help me meet my other long-term business needs. And you do that through negotiating.
Yeah.
So you miss an opportunity if you just sell and close. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does, because I just reflect on a number of deals that I've done in my career, whether it be as a salesperson and certainly running sales teams, where on reflection, we probably left a lot of value on the table because we were too quick to, I guess, when a customer was in their purchasing cycle, we said, let's cut the deal and let's get it done. Thank God we've got this iconic brand. Fantastic. But then as you start to build the relationship and you get deeper into the nuances of the business, you start to realize that there was probably a lot of opportunities there that we didn't either identify or we could have identified if we had have gone deeper and built that relationship deeper and negotiated more fully. Because as you said, we're too quick to close the deal.
So I was calculating the other day. I'm metrics. I'm an engineer by training. I love numbers and to quantify things.
Yeah.
So I quantified that I've done more than 500 RFP negotiations, so formal at the table business awards. Now, there was 3 negotiations a day that I did. Hey, get that supplier to expedite freight or something like that. But I don't count those. Those are mini negotiations.
Yeah.
I followed a lot of people, and a lot of people followed me. There was never a perfect negotiation, not one in all my years. So don't beat yourself up that you found things later. I would say when you find them, that's a new opportunity. You can always renegotiate before the renewal, before the formal process. You can always make the deal a little bit different.
Yeah.
That's as long as you're looking out for both sides to get some value out of it and you're not trying to hurt the other side. But the other thing I'll say is there's a lot have been written on influence.
Yeah.
And the difference between influence and manipulation.
Yes.
And the influences of the world have taken to calling it ethical influence because clearly there's unethical influence. But then I said, well, let's look at an experiment that was done, very famous, on getting people to donate to a charity.
Yeah.
And if you say to someone, would you like to donate to a charity? You're going to get a number of people donate and a certain amount of donations on average.
Mm-hmm.
So they did a little experiment and they said, that's going to be the regular group. We're going to have a test group. And the test group is going to be told, Darren, you're probably not interested, but would you like to donate to our charity? Now, saying the words, you're probably not interested, relieves the pressure, allows them a side door to get out.
Yeah.
And it makes them say, now hold on a second. How dare you assume I'm not interested? so more people donated and more donations.
Yeah.
Now it's to a charity. So ethically, morally, it's a good thing. We can all agree to that.
Yeah.
But dropping that phrase in, is it really ethical to influence someone to donate more than they ordinarily would have. Just because you call it ethical influence
Yeah.
doesn't really mean it's ethical.
And if you're using that terminology, hey, Mike, you're probably not interested, presupposing you're probably not interested. But what I'm trying to do is get you to feel guilty to the point where you are interested and therefore more obligated to find some dollars to donate, which means I get what I originally wanted in the first place. So is it a ethical influencing tactic or is it
Right.
manipulation to
Right.
serve?
And I don't want to like make an answer for it. Everyone's got, there's gray areas out there,
Well,
right? There's black and
absolutely.
there's white and there's shades of gray.
Hmm.
But for instance, empathy. I think the world can agree we all need more empathy. We need to understand the other side sheet of paper. We need to, sympathy and empathy are different, but we need to
Hmm.
understand where someone comes from and maybe why they think the way they do. What culture do they come from?
Yeah.
What's their educational background? What brought them to us today? Just like you asked me.
Yeah.
But when you brand it tactical empathy, now what you're saying is it's a process. Empathy is a process. And what you're saying is it's not real authentic empathy. It is a tool. I'm following what I hope is a logical progress here.
Yeah.
So if it's not authentic, by definition, it's fake.
Mm.
Well, is that the right thing to do? We want to have more empathy, but now we're teaching people to have fake empathy. I don't know
And
what the answer is.
well, it's a really interesting dynamic because you think about sales, negotiation to get a sale. Do salespeople demonstrate genuine, authentic empathy because they care? And that's why I keep saying to sales teams all the time, hey, just so you understand, your sale doesn't actually start until after the sale is made, because that's going to be the maker of how serious are you about building a longer term relationship with this customer, or have you seen this customer merely as a transaction to serve your own purpose, to
Yeah.
hit your own number, right?
Well,
So
I'm
what happens
fascinated by
after that?
the way you phrase it,
Yeah,
because I've heard other sales leaders talk about the sales starts before the first contact, and you're saying no, it really starts. And I'm sure you talk about homework and stuff they have to do before. That's the blocking and tackling.
yeah.
But the 10-year sale starts after the first deal's in place.
Correct. Correct.
I
Because
like
what,
that.
what we're talking about is there are too, and certainly in my experience and working with a lot of sales teams, is they're so focused on their own product, their own service to get that product into their
Yeah.
ideal customer's market, right? And so they think I'm gonna go and try and get General Motors as my customer. That'd be the perfect behemoth customer for me. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get them, right? Now, once
Yeah.
I've got them, what a lot of organizations do, and maybe it's because they've been set up like this, they go to the next customer. Now, with a GM, you'd probably say, no,
Oh,
no.
but yes, because they have hunters. There are
Yes,
salespeople who are hunters, and God love those people because they get told no and no and no and no. They
that's
have to
right.
be so resilient. But the skill of hunting is so different than farming.
Totally, totally. So I'm thinking, okay, when you look at your customer, and I want to weave in the negotiation bit with this as
Yeah.
well, is when you look at your customer, is your customer a one-off transaction, or do you see there's a relationship you can build with this customer over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Now, if
Yeah.
that's the case, you're going to treat them differently. Yes, you're going to do some selling in the short term to get the traction, start to get some credibility happening. But only once that happens, that's when the real work starts, right? Because the customer's going to be thinking, okay, do I know you? Yes. Do I like you? Yes. Can I trust you? Well, let's see, because you've now got my business. Now, what are you going to do? Are you
Right.
going to
So
continue to
so
treat
can I
me the
give your
same or differently?
so let me give you an example that happened today for your
Yeah.
listeners. A customer of ours that another training company had them as an account.
Yeah.
3 years ago, they said we need something new, something different. Came in, did a session, well received.
Mhm.
Following somebody else is always tough. I just followed my
Yeah.
boss, and I've seen him 10 times, and he is world class. And I think I'm good, but following a world class person, you got to up your game.
Yeah.
So they came back, and they said, "Hey, we want to do another training. We've got different people and different functions, and new people and old people, and some people have seen you and some people haven't. So we have to scope this." So we had a
Yeah.
scoping call today,
Yeah.
and they said, "Now here's the way we want to do it." And they They said, you got 2 days, and I want to have this group on this day and the second group on the second day, but they're going to get the same material, but they're going to be in different groups.
Yeah.
What do you think, Mike? Now I can do that. I have a 1-day version of the 2-day class.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't think that's the right decision for you. And let me give you the history from my perspective, my sheet of paper. When we do a 1-day version, the anonymous feedback, and we take anonymous feedback from every single person in every single workshop, more than 20,000 bits of data. When we do a 1-day version, you'll get 2 people out of 30 say, that was kind of fast. I wish we would have had a second day. I have never had a person in a 2-day workshop say, that was kind of long-winded. We could have sped that up. Never once.
Yeah.
The other thing, the value add is when you get people of different functions in the room, salespeople, project managers, purchasing, they learn from each other. They learn how to include each other. They build, dare I say, a relationship, even though they work for the same company. And that cannot happen if they're split. So if I were you, I would reconsider splitting the groups up. And then my knees started to shake, right? Because this is the customer. No, because I'm telling the customer, you're wrong. I did politely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, I'll do it your way, but I want you to consider what I just put on the table.
Yeah.
And he thought for a moment, and he said, I like that idea. I like that value add. I'm going to take that back to the senior vice president. I'll get back to you next week.
Okay.
Now, I don't know where it's going to go, but I felt it was my obligation as a person who's sat in the class, who's delivered the class, to give them the benefit of my knowledge, right? So that they could make an informed best decision for them.
And that's from a selling point of view. It would have been easy to actually say, yep, happy to do that. Here's the rate. Let's go. Happy days. I'll with another client. But you think, you know what? It's what's going to be best for that particular client in terms of the experience you can create, that you'd be doing them a disservice if you didn't at least share them, your thoughts as to what could work versus what may not work.
And from a pricing model perspective, I would have made more money selling 2 1-days than 1 2-day. That's the way we price it.
Yeah.
I didn't even calculate how much money I might have lost on that deal. Because to your point, I think there's the sale we make today, and then when they come back in 3 years and 5 years and 10 years, that's the long game. I want to be a trusted advisor so that I get 10 deals over 20 years.
Yep.
And they don't even think. They just go, Mike, he knows what he's doing.
And that becomes a different negotiation, because you may not necessarily be negotiating on price. You might be negotiating on other things, because at the outset, you've said, and if they know that the proposal you put forward or the suggestion you've made actually for you is going to be less revenue, they might be thinking, well, this is strange. And there might be some people thinking, hang on, what's the catch here? What's going on? This sounds too good to be true. Why are they doing that? And why is that? Because there's a lot of other organizations out there that will try to convince you, dare I say, unethically manipulate you or influence you to do the thing that suits us as a training organization, not what's going to suit the customer.
I have an example for that.
Yeah.
So I have another customer that's within an hour and a half drive. Now they're both looking for training, and I happen to have a week that kind of overlapped. One wanted training short term, maybe longer, and one wanted it Q3, Q4.
Yeah.
So this overlap, there's a week in September. So I said both of them, there's an opportunity here. If you'll both, and I don't have a confidentiality with either, but I'm not going to say the name of either to each other.
Yeah.
I just said, listen, I've got another client in the region interested in doing business. And if you'll both take the same week, I'll give you both $1,000 off, $1,000 off.
Yeah.
Because now that makes better use of my time, and you'll split the travel cost. So that you can both benefit. Yeah. I benefit too, because of the time value of myself.
Yeah. Nice. So coming back to your experience with being in the purchasing side, being in the buyer side, talk to me a little bit about the story that led you to, I guess, escaping corporate, for want of a better term, and moving into the training phase. Was it something that you just learned over time that that you thought, you know what, I can teach this and I can have a much bigger impact rather than just negotiating
Oh
deals
yeah.
for the company.
So there's a lot of people who negotiate a lot of deals. And there's lots of different metrics you can look at to see if you're good or not at something. Are you competent? Um, Proud of my career that I was promoted by every employer.
Hmm.
So in my world, my bias is I've applied negotiating in different industries, in manufacturing, automotive, defense, in internet, in publishing, in hospitality. So I've used the skill in multiple different areas. If you're a PLC negotiator, salesperson, you could
Yeah.
be the best PLC negotiator on the planet, but not be able to apply that to a service.
Yeah.
Right. So I've applied it in different areas, been promoted, which means relative to my peers, it was a skill. My bosses reference me in their LinkedIn things. Hey,
Yeah.
free form. They left it on their own. So I had a number of people telling me, God, I don't know how you do it, but man, I love the way you negotiate. I had suppliers. In fact, I have a quick supplier story. I had a situation where my hands were tied. I was not allowed to threaten to move the business. The president of one of the properties at MGM had been college roommates with the president of the marketing company. In marketing, marketing is one of those relationship plays there. So
Yeah. Yeah.
purchasing doesn't really get to touch that.
Yeah.
So so we negotiated a deal that involved a cost reduction, but it came out of efficiencies. So things like having a planning calendar so the marketing company wouldn't have overtime. We would start to plan for Chinese New Year 3 months in advance
Yeah.
instead of 3 weeks in advance. So we helped them reduce their overtime. Um, let's see, we had a planning library so they could keep ideas that weren't right this year, but maybe they're right next year. We The decision process. The VP of marketing would say, I want it in blue, light blue. That should be our base template. They'd come back with light blue, and the department admin would say, light blue, I kind of like teal. So they'd go do it in teal, and then they do it in purple for the manager, and then the director will do it in orange, and then the vice president would say, what part of light blue did you not understand? So we took the decision process and we made it right to the end. So we took their retainer down from 30,000 a month to 20,000 a month. It became the poster child. But the marketing company at the end of this negotiations, which was a true negotiation,
Yeah.
but we had to give some things. We had to change. Says to me, Mike, this went way different than I thought. I thought it was going to be all about this, and you were open and you changed things and you helped us as a company be better. Who can I tell? And I
Yeah.
said, you can tell no one, because in the culture of MGM, if your suppliers weren't complaining, you were soft.
You were
It,
soft.
it was a good thing to have your suppliers complain. So I said, Shh, don't you, I know you're trying to help my career.
Yeah.
Don't tell a single person. So I've had suppliers tell me that they enjoyed the negotiating process. Now, I think we got pretty darn good deals.
Yeah.
My bosses thought maybe we didn't. Maybe I got taken advantage of. I don't know.
So, mate, what does that tell you about, I guess, the concept or the thought process that sits around negotiations, where the expectation is we want suppliers or we want suppliers to be complaining about us.
Well, see, so understanding the other side sheet of paper, that didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Why we would go beating people up to the point where they complain in the hospitality industry, where we're supposed to
Yeah.
be nice to everyone.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so here's what my bias, because it's my data. You go to work right out of college or right out of high school, and you are you work on the floor you serve drinks, or you're a dealer.
Mm.
Now, if the lights went out in Vegas, boom, pitch black, there'd be a money grab, right?
Yeah.
So then we have pit bosses who are watching all the dealers, and we have eyes in the sky, security, that's watching the pit bosses who are watching. So every step of the management process, everybody might be stealing.
Yeah.
So when you get to the C level, after you've worked all these jobs where everybody might be stealing from each other, you have a natural distrust for the other side.
Mm.
Right. So that's what I built out in my mind, this process of why there's distrust and a kind of beat 'em up side. You're a supplier. If something happens at the Bellagio, if If the champagne isn't cold enough, there's a call to the front desk. My champagne isn't cold enough. Get somebody up here right now. Right? Yes, sir. Yep. And they jump. So when the end customer treats you poorly, there is a natural, although I would say unhealthy, you're going to treat someone poorly that you can, and that's of course the suppliers.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's part of the culture that I really didn't like.
Yeah.
So when I started teaching negotiating, I had the benefit of learning from Bill Garcia, Mark Kensick, who we've lost, but these are guys who made negotiating training in front of a class look smooth and effortless. And I thought, oh, I can do that. Oh, I can tell a story there. Oh, I got this. And part of our onboarding process is we observe multiple partners. We take copious notes. We have an 80-page book. We use no PowerPoints.
Yeah.
Everybody gets a book. It's got blanks all the way through. There's stories that tie material back to people's day jobs, not theory, but how does someone take our class and use the information immediately? So I thought, oh, I got this. And I did my first solo session, and I was horrible. I was telling stories on the wrong page. My timing was off. I would go off in different directions. And I told my wife that night, I don't think I'm cut out to be a trainer. I'm a negotiator, but this training thing's a whole different animal. And she said, well, you got to find another job. Somebody's got to pay the bills. So I had 10, this client had 10 classes back to back to back to back to back. So I started off averaging about a 3.5 on a 5 scale. And by the 10th class, I was a 4.5. And I was like, oh, okay. So I have a cadence and a pace, and I know what's coming. And there were still things I had to learn. Like I had to learn how to not help someone. I used to like help them with their planning before they did these mock negotiations we have them do. And then one time I got pulled away and I couldn't help. And the outcomes were a disaster, but the people learned more from the mistakes that they made.
Yeah.
So now, as a tenured teacher, 14 years doing this, when someone comes to me with their plan and they say, hey, Mike, this is my plan. This is what I'm going to do. What do you think? I go, oh, yeah, you should do that. Even though I know it's going to be a disaster. I let them fail so that they can go, oh, I got to do better. And the got to do better is the motivator that it's tough to give one-to-one motivation. I want them to be self-motivated to be better.
Yeah.
And sometimes failure is the only way to do that.
Oh,
so now I had a client that said in their performance, this is a global Fortune 500 manufacturer. And they said, if you get 3.5s, it's a 10% discount haircut. And I said, if I get 3.5s, I'm embarrassed to invoice you.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. Right. But that's part of continuous improvement. I want to be a better me tomorrow than I am today. I'm a lifelong learner. I try to learn from other people like yourself.
Yeah.
I listen to podcasts. I read a lot on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Some of it I think is garbage. So I ask questions. When I see something I think is garbage, I think, well, where did they come from? So I'll ask a question that'll hopefully get some more information. I have gotten blocked for something like just asking a question. So people don't like to be challenged. I do.
Well,
I tell people, communications is not what I say, it's what you hear. And especially culturally, we speak the same language of English, but these dialects are very different.
Totally.
So we have to understand that. And I tell everybody in my class, you have full permission. If something I say doesn't make sense, stop me. Challenge me in front of everybody because I know the material works. So either you're thinking about an exception, or I've told a story that doesn't resonate with you. And if it doesn't resonate with you, it probably doesn't resonate with somebody else.
Yeah. So ask the question.
So it's a courtesy to me to challenge me so that I can re-explain.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So when you're training, I'm just thinking about salespeople doing negotiations and even reflecting on my own negotiation experiences. If you were to, and it's probably I don't want to sound like an obvious question, but it may be an obvious question, or there may be a lot of different answers to this. When you look at the way people negotiate in most deals, let's just say out at the back of an RFP, irrespective of the service, irrespective of the solution, Is there some one or two key mistakes that most people tend to make that you've seen over your career? Or when you come in and start to train an organization, they bring you in and say, hey, we need to improve the way that we negotiate with our suppliers, with each other, etc.
Yeah.
Is there like some common big mistakes that most organizations tend to make that if we can fine tune those, and whether it be questioning or whatever the case might be, can significantly improve our ability to get better outcomes for all parties?
Yeah. So let me talk to the salespeople. Yeah, that's the large part of your audience.
Yeah.
First of all, sellers tend to be givers. And don't hear something I'm not saying. The world needs more givers.
Yeah.
But givers get taken advantage of by buyers of the world. Buyers tend to be takers.
Mm-hmm.
People who gravitate toward these different professions, and they enter into negotiation, and a buyer will say, hey, listen, that doesn't meet our budget, so I need a price discount, and we need to move the delivery date to one that works for us. And I need the A team. I need to check the CVs. I need a better quality product. I need a longer warranty. These are the things I've reviewed the market, and this is what I need from you. And a seller that's a giver that knows they've done these on different deals, maybe not every single thing on every single deal, but they know that they can give a discount, and they know they can move the date, and they know that they can give a longer warranty. They've done this before. So now they're preconditioned mentally that they're going to get to yes. We'll say either yes. And now the buyer says, oh, what else?
That was
what else
easy.
You got? Right. That was easy. Or they will say, ooh, let me see what I can do. And they'll go back to their boss or to finance or whoever, and they will negotiate internally on my behalf, the buyer. Yeah. And they'll come back and they'll say, no problem. Can we have the purchase order? And to them, that's a negotiation.
Yes.
That's not exchanging value.
Yeah.
So to start to think, if I can give you a discount, I need for you to do my dates. I can help you on price. I need you to help me on this delivery schedule. Something like that.
Yeah.
Can you introduce me? Hey, while I was on LinkedIn, checking out your profile. And by the way, I tell people never stalk someone. That's illegal in a lot of places, and it's immoral and unethical, and it makes people feel weird. But when I'm going to meet with somebody, I absolutely pull up their profile. That's their billboard. That's a free service. They have chosen to use those words about themselves.
Yeah.
And if I don't look someone up, that's like me driving down the freeway and not looking at a billboard. That's rude.
It is.
Right? They put the sweat equity into building it. So I owe them to look at their profile. So I might say, hey, listen, I noticed that you've got this friend, Sally. She's the head of sales over at a different organization. Could you introduce me to Sally? Now, that should take 30 seconds of your time. Oh, yeah, Sally. Yeah, I went to university with her. No problem. Right? Now you've helped me lead gen, and I've helped you on the schedule or the budget or the warranty or something else.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I see salespeople make a mistake on is one of our foundational principles is we have to try to negotiate more often.
Yeah.
I have multiple clients who have bought our price increase class. We have a very specialty module just on price increases. And this is what we saw in the interview due diligence process. The CEO will say, we need to get a 12% price increase. Go get a 12% increase. And the sellers will say, 12%, we're going to get fired. Oh my gosh, they're going to kick us out. They're going to yell at us. They're going to hate us. And they go into purchasing and they'll say, hey, listen, I've got some really bad news for you, and you're not going to like to hear this, but I have to frame it up. We've got a 12% increase coming. How do you feel about that? And purchasing says, 12%, you're out of your mind. Get out of here. And the seller says, okay. And they go back to their boss and they say, hey, I tried, but they told me we're going to lose the order if we force through a price increase. So a good seller with confidence will say, hey, I need a 12% increase. And the buyer will say, because that's what buyers are supposed to do, 12%, you're out of your mind. Get out of here. And the seller will say, hey, listen, it sounds like you're not empowered to talk about a price increase.
Yeah.
And the buyer will say, no, I'm not. You heard me correctly. And then the seller should say, who is empowered? I need to talk to your boss. I need to talk to your boss's boss. I need to talk to finance. I got to talk about a 12% increase. And then force the buyer to say, if they hear anything over 10, you're going to be fired. I'm interested in talking about 10. There's some things that we could do creatively, but I have to have that discussion.
Yeah.
So to keep trying, almost like the children who are great at trying.
Hold the line.
There's little mini negotiations that happen every day. The one that I tell people is when I'm out with my wife at a new restaurant, or when I'm out by myself, when I go to the host station, especially in the US, they will give you a binary choice. Do you want inside or outside? the bar or the restaurant, the booth or the table. And I always say the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I want to sit with the best server. And they look at me and they go, huh? And I go,
What?
yeah, you know the server. I don't want the new, no disrespect. Everyone has to start somewhere, but I don't want the new hire. I want the server that trains everyone else, because if I'm going to pay full price, and my wife has made it very clear, I'm going to pay full price. She hates negotiating. I want the best service possible for the price I'm going to pay. Now, here's where a hostess is going to miss an opportunity, because I see it every single time. What they should say to me is, can you wait 10 minutes because they just got sat? And oh, by the way, maybe I'll sit you at the bar. Can you have a drink at the bar? Now you're upselling. And if you have a good experience, because I expect you will you leave us a review on Google, on Yelp, on some service?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm asking for something of high value to me, the server, and they should ask, but they don't try, to ask for something of value in return to them.
Yeah.
So this try has to happen more often. And don't hear something I'm not saying. Negotiations does not have to be a conflict. In fact, on my bio, it says I am not a conflict negotiator. Do not call me at 3 a.m. when someone's on a bridge.
Not a crisis or hostage negotiator.
Right. That's a different skill set.
Yeah.
Right. Then a business relationship negotiation should be, look, I need some help here, Darren. Here are my constraints. Here's the things that are high value to me that other suppliers, because you've got competition, can help me with. But I like you, Darren. So I'm going to list my needs, maybe their wants. Buyers mix words around. But I want to hear from you how I can help you. And then maybe we can construct a deal where 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah.
I'm not saying yes. I'm not saying we're going to get to yes. I'm saying I'm willing to listen to you in the process. And I've found this is where sellers have said to me, that was great. Finally, I had a buyer who listened to me, to listen to our needs, to listen to what I can do for them outside of what their RFP is.
Yeah. So with that then, what's your thought on, because a lot of people in negotiation talk about this concept of we have to create a win-win outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And a win-win outcome sounds fantastic on the surface, but depending on who you talk to, a win for you and a win for me, it's not necessarily equal. Now, you said before, often sellers are givers and buyers are typically takers, right? So when they come into a negotiation, there's almost this real or imagined friction that starts with, we've got to get the best deal we can, and the other party is trying to get the very best deal that they can.
Yeah.
Is there such a truth as win-win for a negotiation?
Yeah.
And if there is, how do we define it?
Right. So there's a Harvard term, the ZOPA, zone of potential agreement. Anywhere in the zone is the potential for agreement between, what the seller is trying, the buyer's budget and the seller's bottom line, somewhere in there. And some people think, well, right in the middle, that's a win-win.
Yeah.
To which I say, no, that's math.
Yeah, that's math.
I want to make the other side feel good about the deal. They need to feel like they have a win, and it has to be a technical win.
Yeah.
But as a negotiator, I have a fiduciary responsibility. Legally, no. There are people who have fiduciary responsibilities, but I consider it my fiduciary responsibility that my client, my boss, gets the most value possible while I am helping the other side get a good deal. So win-win, but win more is kind of the mentality. But I want you to feel good about the deal, because on purchasing, here's what I learned. When you have a supplier who is at their minimal acceptable margin or below margin, and you need them to come in early, stay late, work on a weekend, expedite, you don't get those responses.
That's it.
So I, as a purchaser, want a seller who is motivated to help me. For example, in deals that I construct, when I'm being a buyer, I want to be a reference account for the seller. And I've had buyers, novice buyers, go, why would I want to be their reference account? And I go, oh, you're going to be their best friend. Because that salesperson, once you're a reference account, they're going to give you all this access to all the special stuff.
Yes.
Because they want you to say good things about them.
Absolutely.
And that's good for both sides.
Absolutely.
So I think what happens is, as a part of the planning process, especially salespeople, don't know what a win looks like. And probably people on this podcast went, Mike, I know what a win looks like. I get the order. Have you heard?
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
win because they got the order. But then, so we also teach program management. So here's what happens: salespeople close the deal, they get the order, they've hit their quota for the month, for the quarter, for the year. They're going to get a bonus, and they go back to the delivery team and they say, "Hey, we won. Know that account we've been working on for 2 years? We won. Here it is. Look at that. We got the order. Woohoo!" And then somebody on the project team goes, "Wait, hold on a second." And finance, they go, "Wait, no, we can't do this. This isn't good business for us."
Yes.
And the salesperson goes, "But we won. Don't you understand? They like me. We won. I'm a closer." And the project team goes, "Yeah, but this isn't a good deal." Salespeople need to know what a good deal looks like,
Yeah.
know what a bad deal looks like.
Mm.
And as they're getting worse than a good deal, it still may be better than nothing. I get that. But as they get into the bad deal territory, they need to be able to say to the customer, "Look, I love you. I really want to earn your business. I put a lot of effort into this, but I put so much effort, there has to be a payoff.
Yeah.
Or I have to stop digging now.
That's it.
We're in the hole.
That's it.
I have to get back." And to be able to walk away professionally, politely, and most importantly, with approval, get your
Yeah.
boss's approval before you walk. Salespeople need to understand what the bad deal looks like before they accept a bad deal.
Yeah.
Now, I say it's harder on the sales side because where the bottom line really is, what's the minimum acceptable margin? There's so many components that go into it. It's hard to understand.
Mm.
As a buyer, I generally know I have an Excel spreadsheet that has all of my options and all of my upfront payments and all of my payment schedules, and I can have finance do a net present cost of money, and I
Yeah.
can know with a fair degree of certainty what the best financial value is.
Yeah.
It's hard to know who's going to produce the best quality, the best service. It's hard to know that, but I can at least know the costs with a much greater degree of certainty than a salesperson will ever know their costs. So most buyers know what a bad deal looks like.
Yeah, and you said it before that you might get a great financial deal that looks fantastic on the bottom line, and you might be, as a procurement person, measured on minimizing margin or maximizing profit, whatever the case might be. But as you alluded to before, if you've got a supplier that's coming in at little or no margin, and the expectation is they have to over deliver because we are a big behemoth of a brand, if you want to do business with us, you'll come to our
Yeah.
terms, then that's not a good deal for anybody, and
I,
it'll
at
start
MGM,
costing you
I,
more money.
so I evolved throughout my career. You know, I started as the brutal, abusive taker buyer, and I evolved. And it wasn't overnight; it was over
Yeah,
years. At
yeah,
MGM, when suppliers would come in, and by the way, there's no place on earth, as much as I love Sydney, we talked about that, and other great cities that I've been to. There is no city on the planet that is easier to get a salesperson to come to than Las Vegas.
yeah. That's right.
So they'd be in my office in person. So this isn't over the phone. It can't be recorded. No one else can hear. And I would say to salespeople, "Why do you want to do business with us?"
Yeah,
"Oh, well, you're MGM. We like that logo, that brand. Oh, that's important. Oh, by the way, you're going to have to sign a confidentiality. You can't use our brand in your marketing. And oh, by the way, we don't pay our bills on time. And no matter what, it's your fault. It is never our fault, just like it's never our fault when the customer has a problem.
yeah.
So are you sure you want our business before you even start selling me on your value?"
Mm-hmm.
Right. But so that's being transparent and truthful, hopefully building trust. I don't know if salespeople want to hear that, though. They want to hear, "I have a number, I have a quota, I want your logo, I'm a hunter." How
And
I don't know what my obligation is to them.
well, and that comes back to what I said before, that sometimes salespeople put so much effort on grabbing that icon, that iconic brand, that MGM, thinking, wow, now I may not be able to use that in the marketplace, but at least internally in my organization, I can be considered a hero because I brought this big behemoth of a brand into our
Yeah.
organization,
We'll figure
irrespective
out how to make money
if it's good
later.
business or not. Yeah, exactly right. And I've seen it happen. Hey, we'll go in lowball, and over the term of the contract, we'll see whether we can recoup some of this cost. But if you're dealing with really sophisticated procurement people and buyers on the buyer side, they know the game that you're going to be playing. they're going to
Right.
keep you really, really tight in terms of your deliverables, and they're going to drive a really hard bargain. So it comes then back to, and there's a couple of mistakes there we talked about, but it comes back to now as a salesperson, as a sales leader, as a procurement, as a team, if you like, a selling team. What are some key principles that you would teach them, being both from the selling side and also the,
Yeah.
the procurement side, to help not so much make negotiation easier, but certainly less confrontation? Because you're right, you said that a lot of negotiations at least start out as combative. I'm going to get as much as I can at your expense. They
Yeah.
don't nearly necessarily start out with how can we come together and create hopefully what is going to be a mutually valuable relationship
Yeah.
and business transaction. What are some key
So,
principles?
so the first, every business school on the planet teaches two key principles at least. And I haven't seen somebody really focus on one of the ones that we do and they don't.
Yeah,
The opening position, the first offer,
yeah,
the anchor, and I've had people talk about, well, who should anchor? Who should go first? Uh, and these are people who generally aren't in traditional B2B negotiations
yeah,
because here's what happens. The buying organization will issue an RFP forcing the sellers to issue the opening position.
yeah.
Generally speaking, unless it's a reverse auction where the buyer says, "Hey, here's my scope of work. Bidding starts at 100,000."
Hmm.
The buyer gets the sellers to make the opening position. Now, every business school on the planet teaches the BATNA,
Yeah,
your best alternative.
yeah.
So your bottom line.
Hmm.
And everybody knows they're beat into their brains. Have a high open as a seller and know where your bottom line is so you can walk away before it's a loser.
Yeah,
But now there's a little technique that buyers do in and they will say things like, "Hey, listen, Darren, bottom line that for me." Now, what I'm really saying is do better.
yeah,
But when I use the words bottom line, and you know bottom line, and you know what you did in the last four deals, and you know where
yes.
you can go, your mind will quickly take you from your open, which when you're writing your proposal,
Hmm.
most salespeople are like, "Whoa, we might. I hope this gets us through the funnel," right? They know they're not going to get their open position. They know that everybody discounts. They know the
Yeah,
game. So when they know their opening position, they're going to come off of it. They go right to their next data point, which is their bottom line, because they know they can.
yeah.
Order, no order. They don't like risk. Have a target to know what a good deal looks like. There's a great deal, there's a
Mm.
good deal, and there's a better than nothing deal. And
Yeah,
you need to know what most people don't take the time to know what the good deal looks like. So I've said that kind of twice in two different ways.
yeah.
The other thing about conflict. So when there's a conflict, what I teach people is there's a story of an orange that's taught in just about every book on negotiating, class on negotiating. And the story of the orange quickly goes like, so when you're in conflict with the other side at a renewal, or when you're even trying to win a deal, which by the way, if you're already in conflict, there's some clues there that you probably have the deal.
Yes.
Why is there conflict? If they didn't want you, they just kick you out.
Yeah.
So you say, hey, listen, so mom comes home from work, she's had a long day, and her daughters are fighting over an orange. I want the orange. I want the orange. And the mom's had enough. It's been a long day. She takes the orange, takes the knife, cuts it in two, and says, here you go. You each get half. That's fair.
Mm.
Thinking she solved the problem. And the daughters run out of the room, distraught.
Mm.
Mom can't figure out what's going on. So she goes to the first daughter and she says, what's wrong with you? There's one orange. There's two of you. You get half. That's fair. And the daughter says, Mom, I was trying to make some juice and there's not enough pulp in half an orange to make a full glass of juice. And that's a good persuasive argument. Makes sense intellectually. So she goes
Mm.
to the other daughter and she says, what is wrong with you? There's two of you and there's one orange. You're distraught. What's happening? And this time the daughter says, Mom, I found this recipe. And in order to make the frosting, I need the rind. I need
Mm.
the peel of the orange. And there's not enough in half an orange to make this recipe. So when you're in conflict with somebody, you say, listen, you tell that part of the story, then you say, I want you to have all the pulp,
Yeah.
but I got to have some rind.
Mm.
So how do we peel this orange together? Now, one of two things generally happens. Either the other side says, that's a stupid story, do
Mhm.
better. You've got competition.
Yeah.
Or they say, I see where you're going. I don't know how we're going to peel this orange. Where do we start?
Hmm.
Oh, okay. So, but you've taken them out of conflict and
Yeah.
you've turned them into, we're going to walk down a path together. We may not get to the end, but you've removed the conflict because we're not fighting over the same piece of the orange. Now, maybe you
Yeah.
are fighting over a delivery date, over price.
But
I've
that's
got a budget. I've got a minimum acceptable. Well, listen, bad news early is good news. If it's not going to meet your budget, let's just go away now.
but that's why it's so important because when I do training in negotiations, I use that orange analogy all the time because it helps people recognize there's a difference between the interests that people have and the position that they hold as well. My
Right.
role as a seller is to try and figure out the difference between the two. So what is it that you want the orange for? What is it that I need the orange for? And then hopefully we can move from conflict, or at least from two different positions, into something that might be a little bit more collaborative, that we can see there's something in common, and then we see how
Yeah.
we can grow the pie and make it bigger.
I love that concept. Grow the pie, make it bigger. MIT teaches this. Jared, I forget Jared's last name, the head instructor there. So they've studied through mock role plays, but a lot of study that goes into it. Because they have 300 people in a session 4 times a year over 10 years. So they have a lot of data points. That if you try to claim a larger piece of the pie too early, the other side senses you're being assertive and they resist growing the pie. If I'm going to get a bad deal, why do I want a big bad deal?
That's it.
So what he says is talk about growing the pie first, make the deal as big as possible. Hey, I see you've asked for a 3-year. Is 5 years in play? 5 years, you're out of your mind. What about 4? Right. So talk about how many business units, how many licenses, how many of these widgets, whatever. Yeah. So grow the deal first. After you've grown the deal, if you've done it properly, you've built trust. And the other side is more likely to allow you to have a larger piece, larger slice, if you grow the pie first.
Yeah.
So that's my coaching from a process perspective. Talk about how big the deal can be. Talk about how you can help the other side. What are their wants and needs? I do want to give your listeners one piece of advice of something to be cautious of. So in the world of negotiating, and when I say I'm not a crisis negotiator, I was alerted by a crisis negotiator. There's a difference. In LinkedIn, when someone reaches out to me that I've never had in a class or never worked with, I say the same thing to them. Thank you for reaching out. How may I be of service? Because I want to avoid the bots. I want to get all the garbage out. If they respond back, then I accept their offer. So Scott Tillema, retired crisis negotiator from Chicago, responds back and he says, Mike, I'm a crisis negotiator. I'm retiring and I'm getting into public speaking and negotiation training. And the differences between crisis negotiating and business negotiating are fascinating. I want to learn more from you.
Okay.
And the voice in my head said, huh? What do you mean they're different? And I started to study it. And now I can't unsee it.
Yeah.
So for instance, a crisis, person's on a bridge, 3 o'clock in the morning, their brain is firing. They are more Homer Simpson than Spock, right? From a mental, intellectual perspective. Okay. So you can use different techniques. Second, they're probably not experienced. Business salespeople, you go to sales training like you offer. Purchasing people go to training. They learn from their peers. Within 3 months, they've seen it all. Because salespeople are a repetitive bunch. So it's an inexperienced person you're negotiating with. The person on the bridge, the crisis negotiator has one job: get the person off the bridge. So they can use techniques and tactics that are short-term focused. My win is short-term, right? Not long-term. And then lastly, they cannot split the difference. Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference. Yeah. You bring home an arm, it's a bad day.
Yeah.
All right. So their techniques are different. So for example, I was in an online discussion. One of the crisis negotiators who is trying to teach business said, hey, what do you think about manipulation versus negotiating? And they started, and I gave a position on it. And she said to me the words, Mike, it seems like you have a problem with crisis negotiators. And I said, ma'am, that's called labeling. And the fact that you didn't know that I knew that is telling. It means that you don't know, you're used to dealing with people who have no experience.
Yes.
I knew it was labeling the moment you said it. You are trying to manipulate me.
Yes.
And I think now I thought it was funny. I could have taken offense.
Yeah.
So when salespeople read these techniques and they sound really good, I just want salespeople, and I'm not going to give them the answer other than I'm going to challenge them to think for themselves. Does that technique, in this case, I use labeling, is it applicable to the business situation that I'm in and want to be in for the long term?
Yeah.
Challenge everything. Challenge everything I say. Challenge everything you read. Everything.
Yeah.
Does it really make sense to you?
Yeah.
And if it does, go for it. I mean, the world's a big place, and I'm certainly not the only buyer, the only mindset of a buyer. I'm weird. I'm different. If your listeners haven't figured that out, but I just want people to think and then be authentic, be the best them they can be.
Yeah, and just consider, is there anything like, is there a bias that I've got that I brought into this that I'm projecting onto what I'm reading or what I'm researching? And just be curious.
But when salespeople say to me and to people that I know on the buy side, it's when they label, it seems like here's what happens. Our brain goes, oh God, they read that book. Oh, do we really have to play this out this way?
Yeah.
Right. You're not really going to trick an established buyer into revealing information because the buyer has seen it before. Buyers are negotiating 3 deals a day. On their desk, there are 3 negotiations ongoing with different suppliers on any given day. Absolutely. So they've seen all this stuff, and they not only seen it, read it on LinkedIn, they practice it regularly. You know, salespeople, I think, negotiate less. They negotiate 1 deal per week, per month, 1 big deal per month, per quarter. Purchasing people generally have, if you're on the services deck as a services buyer, you're maybe buying a marketing service, a sales service, a training service, an HR service. You got things all the time that are active negotiations versus, and by the way, I have 3 to 5 suppliers that are somewhere in the negotiating. I'm not saying we're negotiating with all 5 suppliers.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is I'm taking information from 4 of the suppliers to use with the one that I want to do business with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So buyers have an advantage over sellers in that we're negotiating more often, and we get to see what your competitors are offering on that RFP.
Brilliant. Love it. So, mate, this fantastic conversation. We've gone an hour already. So
time flies. Thank you for making it fun for me. Sorry if I monopolized the conversation.
No, fantastic. And there's lots and lots of gold in that. So for people that want to connect with you, Mike, and learn a little bit more about what you do at negotiationtraining.com by Tableforce, where is the best place for them to go?
LinkedIn, connect with me, mention the podcast so that I know where you came from. And Mike at tableforce.com. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me. You can go to my website, or negotiationtraining.com has a Mike Inman page, and there's a calendar link if someone wants to, just book directly and go that way.
Sensational. Mike, I know you've got a very important engagement to get to. It's we won't allude to it, but it's something to do with bingo.
Bingo.
So,
there we go.
Really appreciate you being on the podcast, my friend. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers, mate. Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.